The Hays Code was the informational name for the Motion Pictures Production Code. The code was enforced by members on a board who censored each film from including things that were against the set guidelines. The purpose of the Hays Code was to have an established voluntarily self-censoring system for the production of the movies for the hope to improve the image of Hollywood, but without creating a national censorship board by the federal government. The Hays Code was effective in censoring most of Hollywood for about 3 decades. The introduction to the Motion Picture Production Code in 1930 says that if the motion pictures presents stories that will affect lives for the better, they can become the most powerful force for the improvement of mankind, which implies the suggestion that film should be an improving medium. Also mentioned is that filmmakers found ways to work within the confines of the code and produce classics that are still relevant today. I see this quote as a way that says that filmmakers are challenged to express their stories and to express their opinions and views on the content of their choice in a different manner, in a manner that is questionably more respectful for all. But I can't help but question, is this good? Should we be limiting filmmakers and what they are allowed to specifically be including and using to sculpt and tell their stories? This then leads into my next quote that is taken from the first film that is in this article. Says that it's the first punch in the face of the Hays Code. The film was called Miracle, and which ultimately showed a controversial segment and therefore was refused to be passed by the Hays Code Board. Because of this refusal, the U.S. distributor of this film took the case to the Supreme Court. The ruling of this case of the Supreme Court sent a bold message to the brave filmmakers who are still producing risky films. The Supreme Court showed them that the Hays Code was not really legally enforceable. Although, this being said, the filmmakers are not in the clear, and that the Hays Code is still a speed bump in the process of making and producing a movie. The article takes note that there is a good amount of all-time classics that were filmed and are still and were made during the censorship. This connects back to the original question I mentioned earlier. Should we be limiting filmmakers? Is this limiting the story they want to tell us? Furthermore, the quote from this article says, "I would like to argue that it proves that censorship does not damage storytelling or filmmaking itself. It doesn't ban the third act or acts or antagonists. So it doesn't impede the mechanics that allow a filmmaker to tell a great story. However, on an artistic level, it is highly pernicious and it limits the palettes that the artist can sample." From this quote, I understand that having the Hays Code does not necessarily damage or hinder from the story that is needed to be told, but it does take away from the filmmaker's effects and tools that have access to in order to actually tell the story in the way that they would like to tell it. And now I connected this back to the fact that I'm an artist, and although I don't produce or make films, I enjoy to paint. And I try to compare this to if I was limited with the tools and the ways that I could develop and show the picture that I was trying to express. And I see this as a challenge, and ultimately could make someone grow in a field that they are in. But I don't agree with what they make and what they produce in the end ultimately is a representation of their vision, whether that's a story or the picture they want to paint. Another quote mentioned is, "By censoring films, even with noble aims of promoting virtuous life, the Hays hamstrung Hollywood when it came to tackling the most vital and troubleshooting of issues of all time. And while there were films that did feature these issues, I would argue that they were not explored with the kind of vigor, depth, and honesty that was needed." And I would have to agree with this statement, because I would have to say that the idea of censoring topics and censoring how they are explained or portrayed to viewers is a way of limiting the viewpoints that viewers may have about these issues. In simpler words, it's a way of promoting tunnel vision on an issue. And I see films as a way to express, inform, and expose these issues to others who may either be misinformed or not informed at all. And going off of this, my last quote is when they mentioned films exist to explore all of life, and films exist to explore all of life in all its glory and its foulness. If it presents its audience with truths they find uncomfortable, then it is not a fault with film. It is a fault of the society at large. Silencing the message doesn't erase the issue. And this quote couldn't speak to be more true.